Hi everybody, my name is Andy Rowe from RoePaint.com, and we're going to talk about painting a house for Paint the Town. And so hopefully by the end of the video you'll have a little bit of an idea of how it should work. So one of the first things that you want to do when you're painting somebody's home is clean the surfaces. So make arrangements to meet with your homeowner, if possible, the weekend before your job or even one of the evenings before the job, and give the house a cleaning. Now you can do this several ways. I recommend pressure washing. You're going to use the least amount of water and you're going to have the best results. If you don't have access to a pressure washer, you can just put a nozzle on the end of a garden hose and you can rinse the house off, and that's just fine. If you have more than one person, the other person could take a stiff bristle broom brush and kind of scrub the house after you've rinsed it, and then you can rinse after that. You just want a clean surface to start with. You're going to have a variety of home types. Sometimes you'll have older homes. So as you're washing across the window areas, if you have a pressure washer, you want to do kind of a fast sweep across it. And that's going to rinse the dirt down and hopefully drain at the bottom there so that you won't have a bunch of dirt in the windows that gets into your paint on painting day. If you have a garden hose, you want to go a little bit quicker. Now it's always best to talk to the homeowner before you get started, and they can tell you if they have any broken seals, broken windows. And they can also keep an eye on the interior windows and doors while you're doing your work, and take some old towels and just kind of put them down if a little bit of water does seep in. Okay, now that you have a clean house, you show up on Paint the Town Day and you're ready to get to work. Now, when you're promoting your event, I recommend getting way more volunteers than you actually need, because somebody's going to have a sick kid, somebody's going to have a rough night the night before. There's going to be a variety of reasons where some people might not show up. Now, the good news is those that do show up, tell them to bring a friend or two as well. So if you promote the event to one of your friends, ask them if they know two people that they can bring as well. The more the merrier, and the faster we get the job done. Once you have your team and you're confirmed, on the day of, show up, you'll have your Paint the Town tools ready to go. In fact, I should back up a little bit. I believe Paint the Town offers pickup of the tools and paint the weekend before. So if you have your tools and your paint, you're ready to go. On the morning of, when everybody gets there, it's always great to have a few minutes of coffee and donuts and visit. Sometimes the homeowners will supply that. Sometimes we'll have one of our team members pick it up. Gets the morning off to a great start. You want to be careful if you do have families coming and you've got some little ones, making sure that everybody is recognizing that there's little ones on the site and they don't get run over by moving equipment, moving ladders, things like that. Okay, now we're ready to get started. The first thing is the prep work, okay? If you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. So even though this is a volunteer day, we want to give them the best job we can possibly give them, because obviously this is someone that has a need of a paint job, and there's a good chance they won't be able to do another paint job in 2 or 3 years if this one fails. So what you want to think about is, can moisture, water, or the elements get past our paint and into the substrate of their building? If that happens, you can end up with water damage, you can end up with rotting wood. So we really want to seal up the exterior of the building. Now you can do this through a couple of ways. One is the use of spackling on nail holes that are exposed if it's a hardwood siding. The other is use of caulking. Now, caulking is really important, because what caulking is going to do is caulking is going to expand and contract. So here in Idaho we have winter weather, we have summer weather. It could be 105 out, it could be below 5 out. So as the building kind of moves and the substrate moves, caulking is going to move with it, keeping that barrier to the weather. So where you want to look for the caulking is you want to think in terms of moisture hitting the building and coming down, right? So the top of a piece of wood, the top of a windowsill, where the siding and the window meets each other. These are all the joints that you want to have some caulking in. A lot of times on a home, you'll see where caulking originally was and it's shrunk or cracked out. If you see those areas, re-caulk those areas, because those need to be caulked. There are some gaps that don't necessarily matter. Newer engineered siding actually has a gap between it that they don't want you to caulk, because it actually moves back and forth, and that's okay. In lap siding, you'll have one piece of siding over the next. You don't necessarily need to caulk that bottom line, because water is going to hit that and naturally shed down. So you don't want to get carried away with the caulking, but you do want to look for anywhere where moisture might sneak in. The other thing is, you're going through doing your caulking, you're going to be hands-on with the home. So you might come across some cobwebs that didn't rinse off, and those cobwebs, just like dirt, can form a barrier between the paint and the substrate. So it's good to carry an old paintbrush or a rag and just wipe those cobwebs or anything that you see that's still on the home that can stop your paint barrier. So sometimes you guys will find that you're gonna have a gallon or two of primer. When do you need to prime and when do you not need to prime? Well, let's talk about protecting the surfaces before we put anything on them. You want anything that's not gonna get paint, let's put some masking up over. You'll be supplied with plastic, with tape, with paper, and you just wanna mask over those areas. Now masking can go really smoothly or it can be very, very difficult. I'm not sure if a hand masker is supplied, but if you have access to a hand masker that will run the paper and tape, make short work of windows. But basically what you want to do is cover the windows, even if it means taking the plastic and tacking it up and some of the tape is touching the wood painted surfaces. You can always peel that later and use a brush to hand cut in next to the actual window. If you can tape directly to the window so that you can paint that trim right up to it, that would be ideal. So you want to mask off your windows, you want to mask off your water faucets, you want to mask off any concrete below the area you're working, or put a drop cloth down. Basically any surface that you don't want paint on it. Light fixtures, things like that. An ounce of prevention beats a pound of cure. Okay, now we've got the house masked, we've got some caulking done. You might wonder why I said caulking and then masking. Well, when you're caulking, you're not going to really get anything on a non-painted surface, but by caulking first, you give that dry time. And the faster that caulking dries, the better. If the caulking's still wet when the paint goes over it, it could potentially crack out your paint. And again, that's going to give an opening for moisture and the elements to get into. So now we have our home cleaned, we have our home caulked, and we have our home prepped and masked. Now it's time to apply the paint. The fun part, right? What I've noticed is very few Paint the Town homes use a sprayer. Usually you're working with brushes and rollers. And so it's good to have a combination of some people with rollers, some people with brushes. The idea is that you want to keep a wet edge, and keeping a wet edge means you cut in an area and roll the area at the same time. So rather than have everybody doing something different, it's best to form teams if you can. Two people working together, one cutting in and one using the roller. So you want to apply your coat of paint. Before you apply that coat of paint, when should you prime and when should you not prime? Well, priming isn't absolutely necessary if you're going over a previously painted surface and the paint is still in good shape. The paint that you're applying is going to have adhesives in it that's going to cause it to bond with that old paint. That'll be okay. What you're looking for is anywhere where you had to scrape. If you had to scrape old, chipped, peeling paint away, or you have any new lumber, any new raw wood, that's where you want to put a coat of primer on. If it's raw lumber, it's going to dry pretty quickly, within about 30 minutes to 60 minutes, and then you'll be ready for that top coat of finish on it. Okay, you've got the house primed. Now you're going to go around and the team's going to start breaking into teams and painting. Again, try to work in teams if you can. 2 people on this section, 2 people on that section. I always have a good time breaking into teams for the competition factor, because then you're working against each other. You can split up the age groups, you can split up, so there's a kid on each team. You can split up guys versus girls, but that can make it kind of fun. And let's face it, that's kind of the idea of what we're trying to do. We're doing something great for someone, but everybody wants to have a good time. So if you have a lot of hands, you're going to get through that quickly. How many coats should you put on? Well, when we're doing something like Paint the Town, what I recommend is what we would call coat to cover. If you're painting a white house and you're repainting it white, and you get a good coat of paint on there and you can't see through it, I think you're good. If you're painting a white house with green and you can still see through it, you'll probably have to put 2 coats on that. The second coat usually goes a lot quicker because you've already laid that base coat down, but it will be a little bit more time consuming. You can always do a test on the night you come over to do the pressure wash. After you're done with the pressure wash, go to a little area with your paint and see if you think it's going to cover in 1 or 2, and then you'll have a better idea of what kind of labor you're going to need on the day of. Okay, now we've applied our paint. We have 1 to 2 coats. Typically we start with our body. When I say body, that's your main color. So that's going to go on your eaves, and that's going to go on your siding. The next color is going to be your trim color, and you may have 1 or 2 trim colors. If you have 1 trim color, usually that goes around the windows and on the fascia board that lines the roof. The best way to apply your trim paint is usually with a brush by cutting it in. I would visit YouTube and get some cut-in tips and tricks. Definitely the brushes are supplied by Paint the Town, so if you know how to use that brush, it'll make quick work of the cut-in work. You might have 2 trim colors, and in such a case you might want to talk to the homeowner about which trim color they want on their fascia, which trim color they want on their window trim. Once you have all the paint applied, then it's time to peel our masking off and pull up all the garbage, get that all cleaned up, get it sacked up in garbage bags and haul that away. And then of course, it's a great time to have a photo op with the customer, the homeowner, and your whole team, because you'll want to remember this for a really long time. So if you're doing Paint the Town, congratulations. You're contributing to your community, which is one of the most important things that we do. And you also have an opportunity to have a lot of fun with family and friends. The more fun you have with family and friends, and the faster it goes, the more people are going to have so much fun. They're going to want to come back next year and do this themselves and maybe put their own team together. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to us here at roepaint.com. We're always happy to help volunteers and give advice, help them through their project. I hope this has been educational for you, and let's go paint the town.